Today we will talk about moving beyond the high value point, beyond the level up phase, and move into the unbreakable phase. A child has discipline in their sleep patterns and the timing they want to be fed. That there is discipline kicking in and telling them it's time. But that does not mean the child is mentally tough because they possess discipline. So discipline is good, but discipline does not come just from suffering over something or being uncomfortable. There is discipline that is innate and it's comfortable as well. Now that you know you got this far with discipline, which is actually a tool that can move you in an opposite direction sometimes, yet you got this far. So I'm excited to share with you the boss of discipline, mental grit. Your change has begun. Regardless of how small or how drastic, you've embarked on a journey to a better path. Maybe you joined a gym to achieve your objectives. Maybe you picked up a side hustle, something online. Maybe you're taking an online course. Maybe you're going through a complete transformation, spiritual and emotional. You've been courageous. You've been conscientious. You've persevered. You've been resilient and passionate to your growth. But now you're stuck or you slipped. Today, we will talk about the dangers to watch out for while leveling up. And if you've already burnt yourself out or slipped a little bit, how to quickly recover from that and not let that weigh you down. What happens sometimes is that while we are changing, evolving, transforming, leveling up, what the body goes through is shock, okay? Whatever you are focusing on starts to receive a shock. Think of it as a high-intensive interval training, because in the beginning, you are playing in between conscious actions and emotional actions. Because you are constantly shifting between these two places while trying to be aware of it, the emotions and the thinking glands go through small and consistent variations of release of chemicals. It's not something you should be concerned about, but rather you should try to induce this. It's a good thing. It goes into the sciences of release of chemicals like dopamine and prolactin and more. You have no control over the releases of these chemicals yet, okay? What you are going through is consuming energy because you are not relying solely on motivation. Motivation is connected to emotions. And so that can sometimes, or many times actually, work against you. Let me recap from a few sessions ago an example of why working off motivation alone is dangerous. Say you're upset or grieving over a situation which makes you want to improve your confidence. You join the gym and you start going at it real hard. The motivation in the first 4 or 5 days makes you do some crazy, insane workouts. But then a week down, you start feeling a bit burnt out. That could lead to a crash, which could lead to you quitting or avoiding the gym entirely. And I have seen this happen in over 80% of the cases over 20 years of my coaching. The initial motivation was there, but because there wasn't discipline, your cycle of change lasted only 4 days, something that should have lasted a lifetime. Some things need to be taken in slowly so that it processes and settles and it can digest as it should, okay? For example, just like drinking a bottle of water or juice, okay, regardless how thirsty you are, if you gulp all that down straight away in 3 sips, your thirst may have been quenched momentarily, but the heavy stomach and the uncomfortable bloating and no more water for the journey ahead. And you may have to use the washroom a bit more quickly and a bit more often when you gulp it down. So same concept. Being motivated or having a reason to do something isn't enough. If you start without discipline, you are destined to fail. When you work off discipline, you have a plan. You understand that whatever it is you are seeking to achieve is a process and not an overnight thing. With discipline, everything starts becoming conscious. You plan your time better. Motivation is something that is welcome to join. There are things you can do to entice your motivation to kick in. Certain musics, certain smells or colognes, dressing up, affirming yourself constantly. These help motivation greatly. Nonetheless, motivation is more of an emotion. It's important to understand that. Discipline is what's going to get things done. And you know the violence it took to achieve this discipline. Only you know the weeks and months of being hard on yourself you had to bear to accurately install hardline discipline into your life, into your relationships, into your health, into your money, into your time. And that's what we will cover today. By now, you're controlling your feelings. You are using more logic than emotion. You can clearly identify the two. You've gotten discipline on habits and actions. You're using cognitive thinking to make wise decisions, and you're letting your good morals lead the way. Great. But you are here because you are not comfortable about something. Maybe you slipped. Maybe you are a recovering alcoholic, and now after just 150 days of sobriety, you slipped. Maybe you slacked on going to the gym or doing that side hustle this week. Maybe you were abstaining from sex or practicing semen retention and, well, you squirted. That's okay. However big your change right now is, that's how big your chances of slipping are. What you need to understand is that it's fine. And it's fine because until this point, you leveled up your discipline and your thoughts and your actions and your health. So now your discipline is delegating tasks to all these individual traits. Today we will begin introducing a new system for which you will reduce the energy you exert in disciplining each personality or flaws or desires of yours. These are simple and beginner tactics being used in top high-profile institutions of the world, such as the BUDS training program for the Navy SEALs, the CIA. Highly enlightened or elevated people also use this technique as part of their focal process. It gets you aware. You're no longer talking to discipline and giving instructions to discipline. Now you are talking to something more powerful. You are talking about mental grit. So let's talk mental grit. What mental grit will do is it will almost act like the God to all your other personalities and traits, which is in control of these little humanly acts like discipline and morality. The first thing and the most important thing to agree and to abide to in order to prepare for mental grit is to agree to be intentional. Live an intentional life, make intentional actions, say intentional words. Everything has to be intentional. And it starts with your breath. Every day, count your breath. Be aware of how many breaths you take over a 3-minute period. 3 minutes of just laying there or driving or standing in the shower or wherever it is that most takes your thoughts in other places, that's where you start keeping account over your breath. Start with 3 minutes, 5 times a day, okay? Count your breathing. The idea here is to fight your consciousness and your intentional decision making while your mind is in a situation where it's most probable to wander off. Start this and stick to it. You will start realizing that you have more focus and more control and you are more present. When that happens, you are starting to hand over control from motivation and emotions to cognitive thinking. Now that I have initiated the topic of mental grit, let's backtrack for a second and identify the differences between discipline and mental grit. Okay? Discipline makes you keep the alarm at 5 a.m. Discipline wakes you up at 5 a.m. to go running every day. That's discipline. Then you come home and you boil your 8 eggs every day and have a nice warm shower every day and get dressed out of your house by 7:30 a.m. every day. The cute neighbor across the hall smiles at you, but you don't hold for a conversation. You smile back and quickly go about your agenda. You've started believing in the early bird catches the worm. No distractions. Your discipline is admirable. It brought you this far. Now let's say in your day any one of this situation arises. You miss your 5 a.m. alarm because you didn't realize the ringer was off and your eyes opened only by 5:40. Or maybe the weather outside is just terrible. In both cases, you deserve this one day to sleep in. You deserve to sleep in for that extra hour because of all your efforts that you've been putting in so far. So you check in with discipline, and discipline gives you the approval, and so you go back to sleep. Or maybe you did your morning routine, but when you got home, there weren't enough eggs to boil, and so you decided to have some peanut butter instead. And the heater happened to break up today, so the water in the shower was cold, which made you spend an extra 10 minutes wiggling your body around the cold freezing water, rinsing a bit of yourself a bit at a time. And also, when you came out, your clothes weren't prepared enough. Maybe they weren't washed or they weren't ironed. And so you just treated it like casual Fridays and put on shorts and a t-shirt and left home. Maybe you've been down a bit lately, and so when the cute neighbor across the hall smiled at you, you stopped to have a conversation which may have got a bit flirty, which made you feel good. The day started late and you had some delays, so maybe today your day started at 8:30 or 9 a.m. But that's fine because you've been working so hard and you've been so disciplined, so it's okay. But it's okay just until this point. Because moving forward after this session, you will understand that discipline too can be manipulated by your mind. And so after this session, you will have no more excuses for failing, for falling, or stumbling on your next level up. Because now you know what to watch out for and how to handle it. Now it's time to work on mental grit. When you have mental grit, discipline just becomes a slave to mental grit. When discipline becomes a slave to mental grit, then all the other emotions don't have any excuses in front of discipline because discipline does not want to get chewed up by mental grit. You follow? Now let's look at the same previous example in which you used discipline. This time around, we will introduce mental grit into the situation. What mental grit will do for you is make sure you don't be careless ever to keep your alarm ringer off. Mental grit is waking up and doing your cardio no matter what the weather outside. You can do your steps and cardio in the house if you have to. Mental grit will make sure you maintain your 8-egg diet, which means you will always be stocked up. Mental grit will not allow you to let your guard low with your cute neighbor no matter how low you're feeling. Mental grit does not care for excuses because mental grit hates carelessness. If you are careless over something which then disturbs your schedule or discipline, mental grit will never allow that. Mental grit controls everything. It entertains no excuses. When mental grit counts till 5, discipline better start doing what they are supposed to be doing. So, the question is, how do we now achieve mental grit? It's not simple. Actually, mental grit is a pursuit in which many have failed and given up. Many have reached a point and said, this is enough. This is where I stop. This is where I'm comfortable. Mental grit is being so in control of yourself that worldly and materialistic obstacles like temptation, desire, laziness, emotional decision-making become absolute. These weak traits have no room in your life once mental grit is installed. And if you believe that you are ready for this next level up, then watch the video posted after this one. Your mind will be blown away with the kind of tactics I will reveal to you and the kind of results you can achieve. I'm not saying all this is easy at all, but what I'm saying is that you will never regret walking down this path. Be safe, be positive, and keep taking those steps in the right direction.